The corridor lights of Solitude 9 flickered like tired eyelids fighting against sleep. Every evening, the station dimmed just a little earlier than scheduled, as if the old structure were sighing under its own weight. No one bothered to fix it, no one except Eli Ward, who was currently standing on a narrow service platform with a wrench between his teeth and both hands buried wrist-deep inside a stubborn coolant panel. A low hum vibrated through the metal floor beneath him. The old refinery cores beneath Act 3 were waking up for another cycle. The sound had always reminded him of a giant's heartbeat, slow, deep, weary. Some nights, he wondered if that heartbeat matched his own. The panel suddenly sparked, throwing a brief shower of blue-white light across his face. "Easy," Eli muttered, as if coaxing a frightened animal. "I'm not here to hurt you." He tightened a final bolt, then leaned back on his heels. His muscles protested, stiff from a 14-hour shift, but the coolant line purred smoothly now. He allowed himself a small, quiet smile, the kind that came only after a job done right, even if nobody would ever notice. He slid the panel shut and stood up, brushing metal dust from his coveralls. They used to be navy blue, now they were a faded, nearly colorless gray. Much like the man wearing them. Eli Ward, 38 years old, certified interstellar technician, widower, once a father, took a slow breath. The air tasted metallic, with hints of old wiring and recycled oxygen. It wasn't pleasant, but it was familiar, steady, stable. And stability, he had learned the hard way, was something worth holding onto. He picked up his toolkit and started down the corridor. His footsteps echoed softly, each step swallowed by the vast emptiness of Solitude 9. Solitude 9. A name too honest for its own good. The station orbited a small, unremarkable moon on the edge of the Galactic Belt. Officially, it functioned as a repair and refueling hub for cargo freighters. Unofficially, it was where the universe sent the broken things it didn't want to look at too closely. Old ships, old machinery, and people like Eli. His personal quarters were nothing more than a narrow metal box with a bed just long enough for a tall man to sleep curled. The lights flickered here as well, though softly, like candles, as if apologizing for their own instability. Eli placed his toolkit at the foot of the bed, stretched his aching shoulders, and approached the compact food unit embedded in the wall. With a few practice motions, he retrieved a bowl and began preparing something that almost resembled soup. The broth simmered softly, giving off a faint aroma. Garlic powder, a hint of pepper, and that slightly sweet tang of hydroponic vegetables grown in artificial gravity. It wasn't much, but the warmth rising from the bowl soothed him, wrapping around his tired bones. Cooking was the one ritual that still made him feel human. He laid out a portion into a second container. Tomorrow morning, he would give it to that new technician kid on Act 2, the one who always pretended not to be hungry. Eli remembered all too well what it felt like to pretend. He sat on the edge of his bed, the soup warming his hands. The taste was modest, a little bland, but comforting. It reminded him of home. Before the sickness, before the silence, before the day he watched his daughter's breathing slow until her chest rose no more. He closed his eyes. The memory was always gentle at first, then sharp. She had been only 8. Her laughter still echoed in corners of his mind he rarely visited, sweet and delicate like chimes stirred by a soft wind. Losing her had hollowed him out. Solitude 9, with all its cold metal and emptiness, simply matched the hollow place inside him. But he had made a promise. To himself, to her spirit, to whatever watched over broken men and forgotten places. I'll be kind, even when the world is not. It was the only part of him that grief hadn't taken. A sudden ping interrupted the quiet. A console screen flickered on with a soft blue glow. Incoming. Unclassified distress signal source. Unknown location. 7.2 kilometers from Solitude 9 perimeter life round. This sector wasn't supposed to have visitors. Not tonight. Not any night. Traffic here was lighter than a deserted road at dusk. And distress signals, those were usually forwarded to command automatically. But this one hadn't been filtered. It had arrived directly on his console. He tapped the screen. The signal repeated, low, crackling, desperate. Something about it made the hairs at the back of his neck rise. He stood, grabbed his jacket, and hurried out. The command center looked almost offended to see him. "Tech Ward," Officer Brannick grunted without lifting his head. "You're off shift. Why are you here?" Eli ignored the sting in the man's tone. "There's a distress signal nearby. It just came in on my console." "Did central relay fail?" Brannick exhaled sharply. "No failure. We saw it. And we're not wasting resources chasing every drifting pod that beeps at us. Could be pirates baiting us. Could be debris. Could be someone's broken toaster for all we know. There could be survivors." Brannick finally met his eyes, cold, dismissive. "Not our problem." The words hung in the air like frost. Eli's jaw tightened, but he stayed calm. "It's 8 kilometers out. Close enough for a maintenance shuttle. I can go alone. You leave without authorization, you lose your job." Eli hesitated, but only for a heartbeat. He remembered the weak, trembling breaths of a little girl who had needed help, and the doctors who said they were too late to save her. He would not let "too late" happen again. Eli turned away before Brannick could finish another threat. He headed straight for the maintenance bay. The shuttle smelled like oil, dust, and regrets. Eli powered it up anyway. The engines hummed, vibrating through the seat. Through the cockpit window, the stars spread before him, cold pinpricks in an infinite dark sea. He set course toward the signal. The emptiness outside felt deeper than usual, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. The shuttle lights swept across drifting shards of metal, remnants of something that had exploded violently. His pulse quickened. He maneuvered around a rotating panel marked with alien glyphs scorched by plasma fire. Then he saw it. A survival pod, half crushed, its surface blackened with burn marks. It was no model he recognized. The distress beacon blinked weakly, like the last heartbeat of a dying creature. Eli latched the shuttle's docking clamps and approached cautiously. The hatch was warped. He forced it open. And froze. Inside, curled together for warmth, were 3 small figures. Children. Or at least, they resembled children. Their skin glowed faintly. Soft blues and greens pulsing like light beneath water. Their limbs were delicate, their chests rising and falling in shallow breaths. One had a deep gash across the shoulder, another clutched something like a metallic sphere against their chest. The smallest trembled with every exhale. They were unconscious, exhausted, starving, and terrified. Eli knelt, heart pounding. "Hey," he whispered, voice cracking. "It's okay. I've got you." One of them stirred. The eldest, a girl with luminous freckles that shifted color with her breathing. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes like molten silver. She stared at him. Not with fear at first, but with confusion. Then pain. Then something even deeper, hope. A weak whisper escaped her lips. "Help us." Eli swallowed hard. He didn't know who they were. He didn't know what species they belonged to. He didn't know how they ended up alone in a dying pod drifting toward oblivion. But he knew one thing with perfect, unwavering clarity: leaving them behind was not an option. He gathered the smallest into his arms, surprised by how light the child was. The other 2 clung to him weakly as he guided them toward the shuttle. The eldest girl whispered something again, voice trembling like a cracked violin string. "They will come. The hunters. Please, please, don't let them take us." Eli didn't understand. But he didn't need to. He gently wiped a smear of soot from her cheek. "You're safe now," he said, his voice firm, steady, anchored. I won't let anything happen to you." And for the first time in a very, very long while, Eli Ward felt something warm bloom in the cold emptiness of his chest. Something he thought he had lost forever. Hope. As the shuttle lifted from the wreckage, carrying the three fragile children toward Solitude 9, Eli felt the quiet sense that this night, this moment, would change everything. For him. For them. And for a universe that had long forgotten the power of simple, stubborn kindness. The maintenance shuttle drifted silently back toward Solitude 9, its engines barely a murmur beneath the vast, motionless dark. Inside, only the soft beeping of medical scanners and the faint, uneven breaths of the three strange children broke the stillness. Eli kept glancing over his shoulder as he piloted, his eyes constantly drawn back to them. They lay bundled in emergency blankets, tiny forms huddled together on the floor of the shuttle. The blue glow of the cabin lights painted their skin with shifting hues. Greenish pulses, soft ripples of turquoise, faint threads of white that flickered along their limbs like drifting starlight. He'd never seen anything like them. The smallest child, a boy, trembled in his sleep, fingers clutching the fabric of Eli's jacket as if afraid he might disappear. The middle one lay eerily still, his chest rising too slowly, too shallowly. The eldest girl watched Eli openly, silver eyes glinting like wet metal in the dimness. Her gaze wasn't hostile. It was searching. Studying him. Testing him. Weighing the shape of his intentions in the air between them. Every time their eyes met, Eli felt something move in his chest. An ache, a calling, something distant and familiar. He cleared his throat and forced his attention back to the console. "We'll be home soon," he murmured, unsure if they understood him. "Somewhere warm. Somewhere safe." A soft humming answered him. He glanced back. The eldest girl was humming. A faint melody, fragile but steady. The sound was unlike anything human. It was cool and crystalline, as if a glass harp were being played underwater. The vibration curled through the cabin, brushing against him like a gentle breeze. The trembling boy relaxed. The still one breathed a little deeper. Even Eli's pulse slowed, soothed. Her voice faded. She lowered her head, exhausted. Eli swallowed. "What are you kids?" he whispered to himself. But he did not say it with fear. He said it with awe. The shuttle docked with Solitude 9 with a low clank. Eli's heartbeat quickened. If anyone saw them, if security caught even a glimpse, he'd lose his job, or worse. He lowered the ramp and listened. Silence. The maintenance bay was empty, just the way he hoped it would be at this hour. He knelt and gently lifted the smallest child first, settling the boy on his shoulder. The child's glowing fingertips curled weakly into the fabric of Eli's collar. The eldest rose shakily to her feet, still keeping one hand on the middle child's shoulder. He helped them both down the ramp. "Follow me," he whispered. Quietly, they moved through the dim corridors, shadows stretching long behind them. Pipes hissed overhead. Vents rattled. Somewhere distant, a generator groaned like an old creature struggling to rise from sleep. But no footsteps. No voices. No alarms. Good. Eli guided them through the back halls. Maintenance shafts, forgotten storerooms, narrow stairwells few people ever used. Solitude 9 was a labyrinth, but it was his labyrinth. If there was one man on this rusty station who knew how to hide from prying eyes, it was Eli Ward. He led the children to his workshop, a cramped chamber of loose wires, old tools, and broken machinery waiting for repair. It wasn't warm, but it was safe. He shut the door behind them. "You can rest here," he said softly. The eldest girl touched the metal wall, letting her fingers glide across its rough surface, glowing faintly. Her expression softened, relief. Gratitude. Eli retrieved a thick blanket from his locker and spread it on the floor. The children settled onto it slowly. The smallest curled against the eldest, pressing his glowing cheek against her arm. The middle child leaned back against a toolbox, eyes half closed. "Hungry?" Eli asked. 3 sets of silver eyes lifted. He took that as a yes. He cooked the way one performs a prayer. He moved carefully, quietly. He heated broth in a small pot. The scent of vegetables filled the air. Soft sweetness, warmth, a hint of herbs. The steam rose in gentle tendrils, fogging his face with familiar comfort. The children watched every movement, as if the simple act of cooking fascinated them. "Nothing fancy," he murmured, ladling soup into 3 metal cups. "But it's warm. And real." The eldest was the first to accept the cup. Her hands trembled as she lifted it. She sniffed it cautiously, then took a careful sip. Her pupils expanded. Her breath hitched softly. A color, soft gold, flickered through the freckles on her cheeks. The smallest child imitated her eagerly, slurping loudly. He gasped at the heat, then giggled. A tiny, chiming sound. Eli froze. He hadn't heard laughter in this room for years. Not since. He blinked rapidly and returned to the stove. The middle child struggled to lift his cup. Eli crouched beside him, guiding his hands gently. The boy's skin was unusually cool, almost chilled. "You're hurt," Eli whispered. A faint nod. The wound wasn't bleeding anymore, but it pulsed with strange light beneath the skin, a glowing vein of blue energy branching toward his shoulder. Eli's throat tightened. He didn't know how to treat injuries like this. He barely understood what he was seeing. But he could clean it. Wrap it. Do something. As he reached for the medkit, the eldest girl suddenly grabbed his wrist. Her touch was light, but firm. Her eyes, pleading. "No," she whispered. Her voice was soft, melodic, but strained as if she hadn't spoken for days. "No human medicine. It harms him." Eli froze. Human medicine. His mind raced. "You can speak," he said quietly. She nodded. "We learned yours," she said, searching for words. "Enough to ask. Enough to survive." Her English was broken but clear enough. "What happened to you?" Eli asked softly. Fear flashed in her silver eyes. The younger children stopped eating. Even the lights overhead seemed to dim. "They hurt us," she whispered. "The hunters. They destroyed our ship." Her voice trembled. "We ran. We hid. But they follow. They always follow." Her fingers curled at her chest, where a faint symbol glowed beneath her skin. A crest, a shape like overlapping stars. Eli swallowed. "Why?" She looked down. Pain filled her features. Old pain, deeper than their small years should allow. "Because we were born." A long silence filled the room. The air felt heavier, as if the metal walls themselves respected her grief. The smallest child crawled into her lap, holding her tightly. She stroked his hair absent-mindedly, her glowing fingers gentle. "Rest now," Eli murmured. "You're safe here." Her luminous gaze rose to meet his. "You don't know what hunts us," she said quietly. "They will come. They always come." He placed a hand on his chest. "Then let them come," he said, "but you won't face them alone." Something in her gaze softened. A fragile trust began to settle between them, like dust drifting onto still water. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but a sudden tremor shuddered through the station. A low alarm echoed faintly. Not loud enough for civilians, but loud enough for those who knew what to listen for. Eli stiffened. He crossed the room and pulled up a small diagnostic screen. A flashing indicator appeared in the lower right corner. Unauthorized scan detected. Source: external ship. Purpose: bio signature search. He felt his pulse slam against his ribs. Someone out there was scanning for life forms. And not human ones. The eldest girl's voice came like a cold wind behind him. "They're here." The smallest child whimpered. The middle one curled inward, clutching his shoulder. Eli turned toward them, breathing deeply. His workshop suddenly felt too small, too fragile to protect them. The hum of the station overhead sounded like distant thunder. A strange dread coiled in his stomach, but he did not let it reach his eyes. "Listen to me," he said softly. "No matter what comes next, I will not give you up. Not to anyone." The eldest girl studied him with those bright, ancient eyes that seemed far older than her small frame. "Why?" she whispered. "Why help those who don't know?" Eli hesitated. He saw his daughter then, seen not with his eyes, but with the memory that lived behind them. Her tiny hand holding his. Her tired smile. Her fingers reaching for him in the dim light of a hospital room. Because no one saved her, he thought, but he didn't say that. Instead, he said gently, "Because you needed help. And that's enough." A single tear slid down the girl's cheek, glowing softly. She didn't wipe it away. She simply whispered, "My name is Elara." Eli nodded. "I'm Eli." The injured boy lifted his head. Seth," he said weakly. The smallest beamed, pointing to himself. "Co." Eli's heart clenched painfully. Names. They trusted him enough to give names. But before he could say another word, a metallic rumble shook the outer hall. This time stronger. Closer. Co flinched. Seth's glowing veins dimmed. Elara stood quickly, gripping Eli's sleeve with a trembling hand. "They found us," she whispered, voice breaking. "The hunters. They are here." Eli turned toward the sealed workshop door. Outside, something heavy landed on the docking ring of Solitude 9. Whatever had come was no rescue team. And it was not friendly. Eli took a breath. The calm before a storm. Then he whispered what he already knew he would have to say. "Stay behind me." And the station lights flickered. As if even Solitude 9 knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The storm had passed, but its memory lingered in the quiet village like a bruise beneath the skin. Broken branches lay scattered along the narrow paths. The scent of wet earth, heavy, metallic, almost mournful, rose in slow spirals each time a breeze slipped through. The sky, washed pale by the night's fury, carried faint streaks of lavender and silver as dawn reluctantly approached. Inside the cottage, the hearth had been repaired, at least enough to hold warmth again. A small fire crackled gently, as though trying to make up for all the havoc that cold rain had wrought. Elara sat beside it, her hands curled around a clay cup of warm herbal broth. But her mind drifted far from the comfort of the moment. She kept seeing the lantern. The same lantern that had flickered in her vision the night before. The same lantern she had seen in dreams she once dismissed. The same lantern her grandmother used to describe in hushed tones, voice full of reverence and fear. The lantern of dawn's hidden, her grandmother had called it. A light that appeared only to those standing at the edge of losing themselves. Elara swallowed hard. She was not someone chosen by legends or blessings. She was an ordinary girl who cooked meals with trembling hands, who stitched clothes slowly because her vision blurred when she tried too hard. She was the kind of girl who apologized for taking up space. What business did a mythical lantern have appearing to her? As she stared into the fire, she realized her hands were shaking, softly, like leaves unsure whether to fall or cling. The warm broth rippled against the cup's rim. "Why me?" But the silence answered nothing. At that moment, the door creaked open. A faint rush of morning wind slipped in, carrying with it the smell of dew, moss, and the first hints of autumn's breath. Rowan stood there, tall, shoulders dusted with mist, eyes calm in a way that always unsettled her heart. He carried something wrapped in linen. "You're awake," he said, gentle. Elara nodded, though her eyes were fixed on the object he held. What is that?" Rowan approached her slowly, as if approaching a frightened bird. He knelt beside her and placed the linen parcel on the wooden floor. With deliberate care, he unfolded it. A lantern. The very same lantern. Even unlit, it seemed to throb with a quiet pulse, as though some invisible heartbeat lived inside the metal frame. Its surface was etched with symbols she did not recognize, but the moment her fingertips brushed the edge, heat bloomed beneath her skin. Not burning, more like being recognized. Elara gasped softly and jerked her hand back. Rowan watched her with unreadable eyes. "You saw it last night." It wasn't a question. It was truth spoken out loud. Elara nodded again, her voice escaping as a thin breath. It called to me." Rowan lowered his head slightly, not in shame but in respect. "Then the lantern has chosen you." The words echoed inside the small cottage like a bell tolling through an empty valley. Elara's heart twisted, fear and disbelief tangling in her chest. "No," she whispered. "You're wrong. I'm not someone a lantern, any lantern, should choose. I'm barely even." Her voice crumbled. She hated when that happened. Hated how easily her courage fractured. Hated how she could stand in a quiet warm room and still feel like the world was too loud, too sharp, too heavy for her. Rowan looked at her for a long moment, the firelight painting amber reflections across his face. "Elara," he said softly, "you survived the storm. Most wouldn't have. You followed light others would run from. And you held on even when everything around you tried to break." His voice was low, not praising, but acknowledging. "You are stronger than you believe." She closed her eyes. A tight ache pressed behind her ribs. "Strength," she whispered, "is not what I feel." "I know," he replied, "that's why I chose you." Silence returned, but it felt different. No longer cold, no longer empty. More like a blanket settling over trembling shoulders. Rowan unrolled the last corner of linen. Beneath it lay a small, folded parchment. Its edges were frayed with time. He slid it toward Elara. "This was with the lantern," he said. Elara hesitated before picking it up. The paper was dry, impossibly so considering the storm. When she unfolded it, she recognized the handwriting instantly, delicate, looping, full of old-world elegance. Her grandmother's. Elara's breath caught in her throat. Her grandmother had died 3 winters ago. With trembling hands, she brought the parchment close to the firelight and read aloud. "To the one who carries shadows inside their chest, remember this: the world does not choose the loudest hearts, but the quiet ones who listen when all else falls silent. If you are reading this, child of my child, then the lantern has seen you. Do not fear its glow. It shows not who you are, but who you can become." Elara stared at the words until they blurred. Her grandmother had known. Rowan watched her quietly, giving her space. The fire crackled softly, filling the room with the warm scent of burning pine. Outside, the soft murmur of morning birds began to weave through the air. Elara pressed a hand against her chest. Not because it ached, but because something deep inside felt, strangely, warm. "What does it want from me?" she asked, her voice small. Rowan tilted his head slightly, listening to something she could not hear. "Lanterns do not want," he said finally. "They reveal." Elara frowned. "Reveal what?" He smiled faintly, soft, bittersweet, like he carried too many answers and not enough words. "Truth. Strength. Wounds we hide even from ourselves." She shivered. Not from cold, but from the sense that everything around her was shifting. Rowan lifted the lantern. Instantly, the metal glowed faintly, like moonlight trapped inside. "Elara," he said, "there is a place deep within the Whispering Woods. A place where the lantern will show you its purpose." She stared at him, breath shallow. "You want me to go into the woods alone?" "No." His voice softened. "I will go with you. But the lantern will speak only to you." Elara looked at the glowing object. Fragile yet fierce, quiet yet powerful. A symbol of something she did not yet understand. She felt the weight of the moment press gently on her shoulders. not crushing, but guiding. A subtle invitation. Her grandmother's words lingered in her mind like warm fingertips brushing her cheek. Do not fear its glow. Elara inhaled slowly. The air tasted of pine, ashes, and something fragile, hope. Finally, she nodded. Rowan's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. Then we leave at dusk. Elara exhaled shakily, her heart trembling but alive. The lantern glowed brighter for a brief moment, as if pleased. Somewhere deep in the woods, something old shifted awake. And the world, quiet and watchful, began to listen. Dusk arrived quietly, as if it feared disturbing the delicate balance that had settled on the village. The sky dimmed slowly, trading its soft lavender for deepening hues of blue and violet. A few timid stars blinked awake, their faint glow trembling like newborn fireflies. Shadows lengthened along the narrow dirt paths, stretching in reverent silence toward the forest that loomed beyond. Elara stood just outside her cottage, fastening the thin cloak around her shoulders. The air carried a bite of cold, sharp enough to raise goosebumps along her arms. Yet beneath the chill, she felt a deeper sensation, anticipation, heavy and warm, pooling low in her stomach. She drew in a slow, calming breath. The whispering woods waited. Behind her, Rowan tightened the straps on a simple leather satchel. He moved with calm precision, every gesture measured, grounded, almost ritualistic. The lantern hung from his hand, not lit, yet somehow glowing faintly, as though it was absorbing the last bits of daylight before surrendering to the night. He walked to her side. "Ready?" he asked. Elara swallowed. Her heart fluttered like a small bird trapped behind her ribs, desperate to flee yet unable to fly. But she lifted her chin, just a little. "Yes," she whispered. Rowan nodded once. Just once, but the gesture felt like a vow, quiet, steady, unshakable. They began walking. The path to the Whispering Woods was narrow, carved by generations of hesitant travelers. Grass brushed their ankles, still damp from the morning's dew. Crickets chirped in the underbrush, their voices weaving with the faint sighs of wind. Elara hugged her cloak tighter around her. Each step felt heavier than the last. Not burdensome, but weighted with significance she couldn't yet name. She kept stealing glances at the lantern in Rowan's hand. It pulsed gently, like a creature aware of its surroundings. "You've been into the woods before?" she asked quietly. Rowan hesitated for a heartbeat. "Yes." "And it's safe?" Another pause. Slightly longer. "It's alive," he replied, which was not the same as safe. The woods respond to intent. They bend to those who enter with honesty, and close around those who don't. Elara shivered. "And me? What do they see in me?" "You'll find out soon enough." She wasn't sure if that reassured her or terrified her. The woods loomed closer with each step, rising like a wall of darkness. The trees were old, ancient, almost. Their branches reached upward like twisted arms, their leaves whispering secrets in a language too old for human tongues. But the moment Rowan stepped past the first tree, the forest reacted. A faint ripple of wind brushed through the branches, though the air outside had been completely still. Leaves rustled in greeting, or warning. The path before them seemed to illuminate ever so slightly, the lantern humming in response. Elara froze. "It reacted," she murmured. Rowan glanced back at her. "The lantern recognizes this place. Come." So she stepped in. The temperature dropped instantly. Not harshly, but in a way that sent a thin ribbon of cold curling around her spine. The air smelled different here, rich with earth, moss, bark, and the slow decay of fallen leaves. Each breath tasted ancient, as though she was inhaling centuries. The forest quieted as they walked deeper. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Elara noticed how the lantern's glow brightened with each step. Not a warm, comforting light, but a pale, silvery illumination, reminiscent of moonlight glinting on still water. It cast long shadows behind them, bending and shifting as though alive. Rowan walked ahead, steady and cautious. Elara followed close behind, careful not to let her thoughts drown her. After a while, her voice finally broke the silence. "What did you mean earlier, when you said the lantern reveals wounds we hide from ourselves?" Rowan didn't stop walking, but his breath released softly, as if he had been expecting this question. "There are truths we bury so deeply we forget they exist," he said, "but the lantern doesn't forget. It sees what we refuse to face." Elara's footsteps slowed. "I don't have anything like that." Rowan turned to her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Everyone carries something." Her jaw tensed. "Not me." He held her gaze for a while, then looked away gently, as though he understood too much and said too little. "Sometimes," he murmured, "what we hide even from ourselves is not weakness, but pain." The words struck something inside her. Something tender. Something raw. She looked away quickly. "I just want to go where the lantern wants me. That's all." Rowan nodded, but his eyes softened, as though they could see the tremble she tried to hide in her voice. The deeper they moved, the more the forest changed. The trees grew taller, their branches knitted so tightly above that not a single star shone through. The path narrowed, winding like a serpent through thick roots and clusters of glowing fungi. Pale blue spores drifted lazily through the air, swirling around them like tiny ghosts. Elara reached out to touch one, but Rowan's voice stopped her. "Don't. Some plants here test intentions." She quickly pulled back her hand. "Test?" "Yes. If you fear yourself, they amplify it. If you trust yourself, they guide you." Her heart sank. Fear herself? She feared many things: failure, being seen, being not enough, being too much. But fear herself? She didn't know. They continued walking until the path opened into a small clearing. Elara exhaled sharply. It was beautiful. The clearing was bathed in soft bioluminescent light from thousands of tiny, glowing petals scattered across the ground, like fallen stars resting on moss. Above them, vines hung from the branches, glowing faintly with hues of pink and green. The air felt still, but not dead. More like the world was listening. Elara stepped forward, breath trembling. "What is this place?" Rowan's voice lowered. "The Heartglade. The lantern will reveal its purpose here." She turned to him, panic crackling beneath her ribs. "Rowan, I don't know what I'm supposed to." But then the lantern lit itself. A soft click. A bloom of cold, silver blue light poured out from within the metal frame, flooding the clearing. The glow was steady, not flickering, not hesitant, steady as truth itself. Elara gasped and instinctively took a step back. The lantern lifted from Rowan's hand. Floated. Hung in the center of the clearing like a suspended star. "Elara," Rowan's voice softened. "It's calling you." Her pulse thundered. "I don't know if I can." "Yes," he murmured. "You can. But what if I'm not enough?" This time, Rowan stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "No one is born enough, Elara. We become enough by facing what we fear most." The lantern pulsed, brighter. Like it agreed. Elara closed her eyes. The air tasted cold, metallic, like the quiet before a storm. Her hands trembled as she stepped forward. One step. The lantern brightened. Another step. Her heartbeat quickened. She reached out. Her fingertips brushed the light. And suddenly, the world dissolved. The clearing vanished. The forest disappeared. Even Rowan's presence faded into nothing. Elara stood alone in a vast, silent darkness. A darkness that felt unsettlingly familiar. The lantern hovered in front of her, glowing softly, almost tenderly. "Elara," a voice whispered. Not Rowan's, not her grandmother's, but her own voice from somewhere deep inside her. "Look." The darkness around her shimmered. Shapes took form. A small figure appeared. A girl, hurtled beside a broken wooden table, hands covering her ears while voices in the background shouted words she couldn't understand but felt deeply. Pain. Loneliness. Helplessness. The little girl trembled. Her shoulders shook. Elara felt her own breath catch. That's... She stepped closer. That's me. Her voice cracked. The lantern's glow pulsed gently, as if acknowledging her truth. And this, the voice whispered, is what you buried. Elara shook her head. I don't want to see this. But you must, the lantern answered. To become who you are meant to be. The scene shifted again, faster, sharper. A teenage Elara, sitting alone on a bridge at dusk, hugging her knees as she tried to swallow tears she couldn't explain. Another shift. Elara at her grandmother's bedside, holding her frail hand, pretending she was strong even as everything inside her broke. She saw herself over and over, hiding sadness, swallowing fear, burying exhaustion beneath quiet smiles. Her breath trembled uncontrollably. I'm tired, she whispered into the darkness. I'm so tired of pretending I'm fine. The lantern brightened, warm, soothing, as though wrapping invisible arms around her. You don't have to pretend anymore. Tears spilled silently down Elara's cheeks. Not dramatic, not loud, but soft, long-awaited tears that had lived behind her eyes for years. She reached out. Not for the lantern, but for the little girl she once was. When her fingers touched the child's trembling shoulder, the darkness cracked. Light spilled through. Warm. Gentle. Healing. The girl looked up. Her younger self. With wide, tearful eyes. And Elara whispered, voice breaking. I see you. I'm here. The child reached toward her. And the two selves, past and present, merged in a quiet burst of light. The darkness dissolved completely. The forest came rushing back. Elara collapsed to her knees in the heartglade, the lantern now resting softly in her lap, its glow warm and steady. Rowan knelt beside her instantly, eyes filled with worry. Elara, are you? But he stopped when he saw her expression. She was crying still, but she was smiling too. A trembling, fragile, but real smile. I remember, she whispered. Rowan's shoulders relaxed. He placed a gentle hand on her back. You face it, he said softly. You faced the one thing you thought you couldn't. Elara closed her eyes. The lantern pulsed warmly, no longer revealing pain, but holding her peace. She exhaled slowly, and for the first time in years, she felt light. The night had softened by the time Elara and Rowan stepped out of the whispering woods. The sky above them shimmered with a pale indigo glow, streaked by faint ribbons of starlight. It felt different now, lighter somehow, as if the forest had breathed out a long-held tension and returned something gentler to the world. Elara paused at the tree line, letting her hand rest against the smooth bark of the last towering oak they passed. The wood felt warm beneath her palm, the way a creature might feel after exhaling. She wondered if the forest, too, had witnessed her quiet breaking, and her quieter mending. The lantern hung from her other hand, glowing not with the cold, silvery shimmer from before, but with a soft golden warmth, like embers kept alive through a long winter night. Rowan watched her with a calm, steady gaze. How do you feel? Elara took her time answering. She breathed in deeply, letting the cool night air fill her lungs, then breathed out slowly. Different, she murmured. Like my bones are lighter. Like something inside me finally let go. Rowan nodded. Healing often feels unfamiliar at first. They walked down the dirt path toward the village, the lantern guiding their steps with quiet radiance. Elara felt unusually present, as if every sound, the crunch of leaves beneath her boots, the whisper of wind across the fields, the distant hum of insects, pressed gently against her senses, reminding her she was here, alive, awake in ways she hadn't been for years. When they approached her cottage, The soft glow of the lantern painted warm streaks along the wooden walls. Elara stopped at her doorstep, turning to face Rowan. "Will the lantern stay like this?" she asked. Rowan lifted a shoulder slightly. "It reflects you. However you are, it will be." Elara looked down at it, the soft light reflecting in her eyes. "I never thought I'd be worth something like this." Rowan's voice softened. "You always were. You just couldn't see it." Something shifted in her chest. A small ache, but tender and new, like the stretch of unused muscles learning to move again. Before either could speak further, a distant sound echoed across the village. A low, resonant hum that vibrated through the ground. The air trembled. Birds took flight from the rooftops. A sudden rush of wind swept through the trees. Elara's heart stumbled. Rowan's head snapped toward the sky. "They're here." Above them, the clouds split open with a silent, rippling distortion, like fabric being pulled apart. Through the opening descended a vessel unlike anything Elara had ever seen. Its surface shimmered with iridescent patterns, shifting colors that felt neither metallic nor organic but somewhere in between. It moved with quiet grace, as though the air parted eagerly to let it through. Villagers emerged from their homes, staring wide-eyed at the descending phenomenon. Some gasped. Others fell to their knees. A few whispered prayers or curses under their breath. Elara felt her pulse hammer in her throat. Rowan stepped instinctively in front of her, not blocking her view, but standing as a shield. The vessel landed without sound, settling in the village square with a soft glow that radiated outward like a sunrise. A hush fell over the crowd. A section of the vessel's hull opened, revealing a tall, slender figure descending a ramp of shimmering light. Their form was humanoid but elongated, graceful, adorned in robes that flowed like liquid starlight. Their eyes glowed with calm, ancient intelligence. More figures followed, each radiating an aura of serene authority. Elara felt her breath catch. She clutched the lantern instinctively. Rowan whispered, "Royal emissaries." From the vessel emerged two smaller silhouettes, children, no more than 7 or 8, with the same iridescent sheen along their skin as the adults. They looked fragile, frightened, familiar. Elara's heart lurched. The children who had stumbled into the Whispering Woods weeks before. Except now, they recognized her. Their luminous eyes widened, glowing brighter when they saw the lantern in her hands. "Elara," one of them whispered. Their voice carried a delicate tremor. "You kept us safe." The tall envoy stepped forward, bowing deeply, so deeply that the crowd gasped. A gesture of profound respect. "Keeper of the lantern," the envoy spoke, their voice melodic and resonant, carrying the weight of distant galaxies. "Your compassion has altered the path of our people." Elara blinked, stunned. I just helped 2 lost children." "And that," the envoy replied, "is precisely why your actions hold such power." They turned to the crowd. "Our young heirs, children of the Celestian Empress, were lost during a fracture in the cosmic roots. Fear could have driven you to harm them. Greed could have tempted you to sell or exploit them. But instead, your people protected them. And one among you," the envoy's gaze fell on Elara, "showed them a kindness many empires lack." Elara shook her head slightly. "I didn't do anything special." The envoy extended their hand toward her. Light flowed from their fingertips, swirling gently around her. "You offered what most cannot, unconditional kindness without expectation of reward. That act will reshape our alliance with your world." A soft murmur spread among the villagers. Rowan stepped beside her, posture straight, watchful. The envoy continued, their voice lowering with reverence. "And the lantern of Asterion, the relic that awakens only for a heart in harmony with truth, has chosen you. Such a choice occurs once in an age." Elara felt heat rising to her cheeks. "I'm no guardian, I'm barely more than a girl who was lost in her own life." The envoy studied her for a long moment. "Many guardians begin lost," they said softly, but the light you found in yourself has rekindled ancient bonds between our worlds." The two children approached her timidly. One reached forward, touching the lantern. A soft note, like a harp string, vibrated through the air. "You saved us," the child whispered. "You saved more than you know." The envoy turned to Rowan. "And you, Sentinel, you guided her through the woods, knowing the path could break or remake her. You acted with honor." Rowan bowed slightly, though his jaw tightened with modest discomfort. Then the envoy turned back to Elara. "We wish to bestow you a gift." Elara stepped back instinctively. "A gift? I don't. Not wealth," the envoy assured. "Not power. But truth." They lifted their hand. A sphere of light, soft cold, warm like a memory, formed between their palms before drifting toward Elara. She didn't move. Couldn't. The sphere touched her lightly on the chest. Elara gasped. Images flooded her mind. Not frightening or overwhelming, but vivid, like a dream she had forgotten. Her grandmother's laughter, echoing in the kitchen. Her younger self dancing barefoot on warm stone. Her hands holding the lantern for the first time. Faces she'd helped. Hearts she'd softened without knowing. Moments where her quiet kindness had rippled outward, touching lives she never saw. When the vision faded, tears streamed silently down her cheeks. The envoy spoke gently. "You believed your life was small. But threads of kindness weaved across worlds. You changed ours." Elara pressed her hand over her heart, feeling the lingering warmth of the vision. She turned to Rowan, who watched her with quiet pride. "What do I do now?" she whispered. Rowan said nothing. The envoy stepped closer, voice soft as dawn. "Live. Continue offering the kindness only you can give. When we require you, we will come. And until then, the lantern will guide you." The vessel hummed once more, preparing to ascend. The children hugged her briefly, light, warm, sincere, before following the envoy back up the ramp. Just before the opening sealed, the envoy looked back. "Remember, Keeper, a single light can alter the course of a galaxy." Then they were gone. The vessel rose without sound, the sky rippling as it slipped back into the stars. The villagers trembled with awe. Slowly, hesitantly, they began to cheer. A celebration born not of spectacle, but of gratitude. Of wonder. Rowan turned to Elara, his eyes soft. "How do you feel now?" Elara breathed in the cold night air. She looked at her lantern, glowing steadily in her hands. And she smiled. Not small. Not hesitant. Full. "I feel," she paused, searching for the right word. "Found." Rowan chuckled softly. "Good. The world needs you found." Elara looked toward the sky, the stars shimmering like scattered embers, and for the first time in her life, she didn't feel small beneath them. She felt connected, a thread of light in a vast, living tapestry. And deep in her chest, something warm and steady whispered, "You are enough. You have always been enough. And you will light the way."